represent and defend a position that would allow these individuals to participate in medical decision making. And I argue it's low to medium stakes medical decisions. It's not the high stakes medical decisions like end of life decisions like we've talked about, but low stakes medical decisions that presumably would be important for the families of these patients and for the patients themselves. The world can be much more complicated than the way in which philosophers typically conceive of the world. In the philosophy classroom, we think about thought experiments, and we conceive the world in these abstract ways to try to tease out the differences in concepts and the way in which we use language, etc. But the world is a really messy place, and particularly in the medical ethics context, the healthcare context raises so many issues that are not black and white. Philosophers can contribute to that because they can help physicians to think clearly through these problems, potential solutions to those problems.
Andrew, it's been a thrill to get a peek into your intellectual world and to meet some of the people that are involved in what you're thinking about. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Philosophy can actually be useful in the world.
You were listening to The Open Mind. It's the latest in our series, Ideas from the Trenches, where we showcase the work of PhD students across the country. The producers are Nicola Lucic and Tom Howell. Head to our website, cbc.ca/ideas, for more about our guests in this episode and for links to the amazing work being done at the Brain and Mind Institute at Western University. Thanks to all our guests.
My name is Laura Gonzalez.
Linda Gosman.
Linda Bruni, and I live with both my parents, Ines and Mike Bruni, as well as my sister Ida.
My name is Joseph Fins.
Anita Silvers.
My name is Andrew Peterson, and I'm a philosophy PhD student.
Special thanks to our colleagues at the CBC studios in London, Ontario, and New York City, as well as to freelance producer Hannah Kingsley-Ma in San Francisco. Studio technician Dave Field. Associate producer Liz Naj. The executive producer of Ideas is Greg Kelly. I'm Paul Kennedy.
This is CBC Radio 1, 99.1 FM in Toronto.
At 3 o'clock in the morning, the city is, in many ways, the city that I love the most. It's quiet, it's very still, and that's what I love. I love the idea that the city's about to happen. This idea of possibility, that there is all this kind of coiled energy and excitement that is ready to spring out. I ride my bike to work, and it feels like it's a city on the verge of happening. My name is Matt Galloway, host of Metro Morning.
Weekday mornings starting at 5:30 on 99.1. CBC Radio 1.
The CBC News is next, followed by Q.
Hey, I'm Ali Hassan in for Tom Power. We talked to Lori S. Thompson. She's one of the original gorgeous ladies of wrestling that the new Netflix series Glow is based on. Lori will be telling the story behind the real Glow.
This is CBC News. I'm Carol McDowell. More than 230 wildfires are burning in British Columbia. Most of them are in the interior. 14,000 people are out of their homes because of the encroaching flames. Greg Rasmussen has an update for us from Kamloops.
I'm tired.
Cheryl Kleber grows emotional. She sits on a park bench outside the Kamloops Evacuation Center. She's been on the move since Friday, chased by the fire near her home in Lac-La-Hache. Last night, she was forced to flee a temporary shelter in the town of 100 Mile House when it had to be evacuated. She drove through the night to get to Kamloops.
But it's the unknown. You don't know if your home is there. You don't know what's going on. People were losing livestock, animals.
Susan Smith learned her mobile home was destroyed, along with about 30 others in a trailer park near Ashcroft.
We lost everything.
Smith has no insurance and now wonders what she and her husband, a retired police officer, will do. The BC government has promised $100 million in aid, but it's not clear how much, if any, will go to couples like the Smiths. Greg Rasmussen, CBC News, Kamloops, BC.
Many residents say the evacuation process has not been very organized. Many of them own ranches or farms, meaning they don't just have themselves and their children, but lots of animals they have to take with them. Laura Meakin had to flee her home in 108 Mile Ranch last night. She has 4 dogs. She and her neighbors own horses.
There was 22 horses on the green belt. They all had to get moved. A few people came up, got some horses. Horses were trapped. Our horses were in there. There was nobody came to our door. We had no warning, no alert. Nobody came to the door to warn us to get out. We just had to take it upon ourselves to get the horses out. The last 2 horses would not load. So a girlfriend of mine, she decided to ride one of the horses and pull the other horse 8 miles to 100 Mile.
That was Laura Meakin from 108 Mile Ranch speaking to As It Happens earlier today. Animal rights activists in Calgary are calling for an end to chuck wagon racing. The call comes after a horse named Cowboy had to be put down after breaking its leg during a race on Sunday night. Peter Fricker is with the Vancouver Humane Society. He says Cowboy's death is appalling and that 60 horses have died because of chuck wagon racing since 1986. Now to Washington, there's more speculation about Donald Trump's alleged connections to Russia. The newest development stems from a meeting last year involving Trump's son and 2 other key members of the Trump team. The 3 were meeting with a Russian lobbyist. Evan Dyer is following that story.
What Donald Trump Jr. described on Friday as an innocent meeting to talk about international adoptions by Sunday had become something quite different. Donald Trump Jr. now admits that Russian lawyer Natalia Veselnitskaya wanted to talk about repealing the sanctions brought against Russian officials under the Magnitsky Act, a topic close to the Kremlin's heart. He also now admits he agreed to hold the meeting because he'd been promised the lawyer had damaging information about the Hillary Clinton campaign. But he says the lawyer had nothing concrete to offer, so he ended the meeting. Today it emerged that the man who hired the lawyer was a Russian businessman called Amin Agalarov, son of one of Russia's richest developers. Both father and son have had extensive business dealings with the Trumps, and both are close to the Kremlin. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Washington.
Later this week, the Bank of Canada is expected to announce a rate hike. 3 million Canadians have a line of credit against their homes. 40% do not make payments against the principal. Doug Boyce has his own company and helps people manage their finances.
Debt isn't the problem, it's the ability to service that debt that's going to be the big wake-up call.
The average line of credit for the 3 million people who have one is $70,000. That's just a little more than $200 billion nationwide. The announcement is expected Wednesday. Not your latest CBC News. I'm Carol McDowell.
And now the weather forecast for Toronto, Hamilton, and Niagara tonight. Mainly cloudy, 40% chance of showers, the high near 19. For Tuesday, a mix of sun and cloud, the high 27. Humidex reading 32, the UV index very high. Peterborough and the Kawarthas, partly cloudy tonight. Slight chance of showers, fog patches developing overnight, the low near 17. For Tuesday, a mix of sun and cloud, the high 27. Humidex reading 32, the UV index very high.
Jacqueline Stallone is playing my manager, Sylvester Stallone's mother. And she's standing on the side going, "Get back in there, Susie, you're not a quitter."
I don't know about you, but if Rocky's mom told me to get back in the ring, then back over the rope I would go. I'm Ali Hassan, you're listening to Q. Encouragement from Mama Stallone is just one of the wild stories from Laurie S. Thompson's wrestling career. Hear how her real-life league inspired a new Netflix show. Then, Leela Downs. She's a Mexican-American singer shutting down hateful rhetoric with heartfelt songs. Plus, comedian Jordan Peele on making a horror movie that dares to tell the truth. He'll talk about the film Get Out. That and much more today on Q. I'm Ali Hassan in for Tom Power. Now, fair warning, what you're about to hear might inspire you to buy a unitard and join your local wrestling league.
Hello, ladies. I'm Sam Sylvia, and this is Glow.
Sorry, what's Glow?
Gorgeous ladies of wrestling.
Are you hiring actors to play wrestlers, or are we the wrestlers?
Go!
Yes.
Sam Sylvia, played by a recognizable voice, Mark Maron. That is just a bit of the new Netflix series Glow. And if you haven't seen it yet, it's about a group of women who come together to make a wrestling TV show. And the story is based on a real, low-budget show from the 80s that was called The Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling. And Laurie S. Thompson was one of them. Before going into law, Laurie was a dancer and an actor working in Las Vegas. And fans of Glow knew her as Susie Spirit, a wrestler whose character was a cheerleader. And as you might expect, Laurie S. Thompson has some wild stories from inside the ring, including the time that she got a horrific arm injury that fans still talk about today. For people who haven't seen the real Glow, how would you describe that?
Oh my gosh, the real one, 30 some odd years ago, was such a fun comedy show to do. It was just, had so much fun sarcasm and almost poked fun of wrestling and poked fun of all of ourselves, each of us. It was really a time in the 80s when I think everyone sort of wanted to suspend belief and see fantasy like this.
Right.
And, you know, whenever you're doing comedy, you kind of throw it out there and you're not sure it's going to stick. And this happened to stick. So we were very fortunate.
How did you get the job?
Well, I was the principal dancer in the Folies Bergère, and I had a contract where I had to perform twice a night, 6 days a week. So I wanted to do some more television and film projects, but I was kind of limited, and I had to do something that was shooting in Las Vegas. So I heard about this interview for a new television show, and I went over to interview for it, and there was Matt Cimber and David McLean, the producer and the director, and they showed me a video of Japanese women wrestling, very, very good gymnasts, and I stood up and said, "I'm so sorry, I'm not a wrestler. I'm an actress and a singer and a dancer, and I've done some comedy, but I'm not a wrestler." So I headed for the door, and Matt Cimber actually chased me down the elevator. He said, wait, wrestling is our hook. This is going to be a new comedy show. We're still in the process of creating it. Whatever you can do, we will film. And he said, and you can be a part of us creating this show. So I took the elevator back up with him. Unfortunately, I had to have a lot of requirements in order to do the show. I had to do my show at night.
Right, twice a night.
Yeah. Yeah, I had to be able to do that. And I said, I want to do spin-offs. I want to use this to do some spin-offs for some other shows. And third, I want to learn the business. I want to learn the television industry. So I want to watch you make this show. So I thought, yes, that's what I'm doing.
And when you eventually became a wrestler, Susie Spirit, did you feel like, oh, this is as much comedy or more comedy than it is wrestling?
Well, Ali, you have to remember, you don't just eventually become a wrestler. I trained for about 6 weeks. All of us did.
That's
so
quite
it was
short.
Pretty, yeah, extensive. And, you know, I was a gymnast as well as a dancer. So I and a cheerleader, I actually was, and did some acrobatic type cheerleading. So going through the training was very, very hard. And I used to look at some of the other ladies, and they didn't have that training, and they were doing it. And I thought, well, I ought to be able to do it if they can.
Yeah. If you're just tuning in, you are listening to Q, and I'm Ali Hassan in for Tom Power. I'm talking to former professional wrestler Laurie S. Thompson. She was one of the real gorgeous ladies of wrestling, a wrestling show from the 80s that has inspired a new Netflix hit show also called Glow. Tell me, based on your experience there, what was your reaction when you heard that a new show on Netflix inspired by Glow was going to be created?
When I heard the new show, it was funny. When I heard about the new show, I thought, oh my gosh, that's going to be interesting to have it be behind the scenes. And certainly the producers, are well known, and they always pick something sort of edgy, like Weeds, Marijuana, or Orange is the New Black, like Prison.
Yeah.
So I thought,
what was going on
wrestling's a
behind
new edgy thing.
It is. What was going on behind the scenes? Why was that going to be difficult to capture that?
Well, my story is certainly not something that was ever shown on Glow in the 80s, because in the 80s, we were very careful to say that these are real people.
Right.
I went on talk shows as Susie Spirit. In fact, one time I was on the Late Night Show with Joan Rivers, with Linda Carter, who played Wonder Woman, and Mike Tyson, who is a boxer. Well, everyone knows Mike Tyson, and John Davidson, and there I am as Susie Spirit in my cheerleading outfit, pretending like I'm a real person rather than the actress playing Susie Spirit. So that's what I think is very different, is the show in the 80s never did give you... No, it was not about reality.
Right, yeah, no, wrestlers are known for being deep in character.
Yes. I did see the show. I saw the first episode, and I thought, it's kind of really interesting what happens around the show. And even the actresses themselves looking at it saying, are we really going to do this?
Yeah.
Am I really going to do a scene where I wrestle Palestina and she's going to throw sand in my face and cheat? So Americana is going to come to the rescue, and the next thing you know, Ninochka, the Russian, comes in to help Palestina, and the whole thing gets resolved by Corporal Kelly with her partner attaché. And you think, am I really going to be able to pull this off and make it believable enough and funny enough for people to say, no, that's not stupid?
I mean, you're bringing up these names, and it's an interesting thing, because the Real Glow and the Netflix Glow both comment on the politics of the 80s, right? Racism, sexism, Cold War tensions.
Yes.
Those play into, and now with Netflix Glow, you see some of the wrestling characters are, again, those ethnic stereotypes. There's a terrorist character called Beirut. An Asian character is called Fortune Cookie. A black woman is cast as welfare queen. And that is a pretty fair reflection of the elements of the Real Glow too, as you mentioned, with Palestinian. Did the women in the Real Glow talk about how racist and potentially hurtful those type of characters could be? Was that something that ever came up?
We didn't. Well, I don't know. I wasn't around the other girls too much because of my schedule. I spent most of my time, either in other performing or with the director and the writer. And, the writer, when Steve would come in with some of these scenarios, I would just laugh. I thought it was very funny. And I think, too, that a lot of the girls were young. I was one of the older ones, and I was 25, and a lot of them were 19, 20, 21 years old. So I don't know that they really thought too much about that. The writer was very clever, and maybe he crossed the line. We didn't get, as far as I know, we didn't get too many letters on it, but
right.
It was pretty funny.
You mentioned that it takes 6 weeks. It was just 6 weeks of training. As a dancer, what was it like to wrestle? Were you prepared to fight in any way?
Well, the party line is, of course we're fighting.
Yes.
But, the real line is that it's a collaboration. So you need to be able to trust your partner. They need to trust you. You need to work together. And it's complex. It's not like it's one-sided. So we rehearse carefully. We talk it through. We trust each other in the ring. And while you're doing that, you're improvising as well. So the things that you say and the things that happen by mistake that you have to go with are all sort of part of an improv. And one time we made a mistake. I dove over the top of the lady playing the headhunter and missed her leg and got on the inside instead of the
Wi-Fi
outside.
off.
She fell over, and that's how my arm got dislocated.
Yeah.
So
in fact, you were involved in one of the show's most shocking moments. Let's take a listen to a clip from Glow, the story of the gorgeous ladies of wrestling.
And the paramedics make their way back to the ring, but it's time to tend to the fallen dancing girl.
There's no way to fight without really fighting. I've never found out how to do that. I mean, we had to connect.
Wi-Fi off. and more pushing, you know, of like, do bigger, do better.
Bluetooth
The
off.
crowd would be out there chanting and going, you know, break her arm, break her arm. But anybody that's seen the footage of Susie Spirit's arm coming out,
Off.
we replayed it a million
Off.
times. No, nobody wanted that.
Airplane mode on. Location off.
The bone
Cast
that
off.
was torn from its socket. And this is the incident that caused it. The headhunter pushing that right leg into Susie Spirit's right arm and pinning it back, tearing and shredding that elbow. It's all
Wi-Fi on.
Now, they made it
Bluetooth
dramatic, but
on.
It was awful. It wasn't. Tell us about what
Cellular
happened that day. What
on.
went wrong?
It was funny because
Cast is
I was
on.
going to be doing a second match that day against Attaché, the Attaché to Corporal Kelly. And we had just a singles match. And she had fractured a bone in her hand, so she had a cast on it, and she was wrestling with a small cast. And me being Susie Spirit, I didn't think it would be fair to fight her with her wrist, hurt. So I had a sling, and I was going to wear a sling for that match, so that it would be a fair match, because you can't win if it's not a fair match.
Sure.
Right? So that was my character. So I had the sling there, ready, preset to wear for the next match, and went to do the match with the Headhunters. This was a kind of a complex move where I would dive over the top of her, grab her legs, pull her back, and we would both do a double roll, and it would be the pin, where I would pin her. And like I said earlier, I jumped over and got my arm on the wrong side of her leg. She fell over sideways, and it basically sounds like celery snapping, like when you break a piece of celery, because the ligaments came off of the insertions, and that was the dislocation. So
Off.
the funny thing is, we both knew something was wrong.
Off.
And I had to literally pick my arm up off the mat. And
On.
here's the funny part. She
On.
didn't have to do. She was supposed to lose.
On.
And so I had to pick
And
her up
on.
off the mat, go over to the side of the rings, and Jacqueline Stallone is playing my manager, Sylvester Stallone's mother. And she's standing on the side going, "Get back in there,
On.
Susie, you're not a quitter."
On.
What I
I'm
found?
going to whisper to her, Jackie, my arm is broken. I have to get out.
You know what I find most interesting about that story, Lori, is that I think 3 times you said, what is so funny is that now either you have an odd sense of humor or we don't find this. I found that horrible, but watching that, I thought it was, just painful to watch. But you look at it with such a lighthearted outlook at this stage.
Well, I guess when you go into things like this, you know that something could happen.
Yeah.
We hope that it doesn't. And I'll tell you, as soon as I went through those ropes, I thought, oh no, I am starring in the Folies Bergère tonight.
Right, well, this is what I was going to
What am I going to
ask.
say to the producer?
How long were you out for?
So I was out of the Folies Bergère about 4 weeks. We re-choreographed some of our numbers so I could go back in before I could put a lot of weight on it. And it was about 6 weeks before I started training hard again to get ready for the second season of Glow, which wasn't a year later. It was within the same year. So I think we went on hiatus for about maybe a month before we started taping the second season.
I want to ask you about your dancing, because it's very interesting how you manage both of those two things together. Before you became a lawyer, you had a long career as a professional dancer. What impact did wrestling have on your career as a dancer and a performer?
I actually left Glow because they were going on doing live arena tours. And not to be cliche about it or sarcastic, but I said, well, I'm not really a wrestler. I just play one on TV. I can't go around and do these live arena tours. I certainly could have, but I wanted to stay in the Folies Bergère. I very much enjoyed doing that show. And I had learned what I wanted to from television. And I've always been able to look back on that and feel very fortunate.
Lori Thompson, thank you for sharing your experience with us.
Oh, well, thank you. It's been fun.
Lori S. Thompson, is a former actor, dancer, and wrestler, and she was known as Susie Spirit, a character with a cheerleader persona in the Real Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling. And a show based on that league entitled Glow is on Netflix now.
Hi, this is Wes from Darcy's, and you're listening to Q.
Now, Lila Downs is a renowned Mexican-American singer, and her life's mission is to break down barriers between her two countries. And Lila's done that with song. She's got 12 records and a Grammy to her name, and she's also done it through activism as one of Mexico's most vocal indigenous voices. But what happens when your life's goal, getting rid of a cultural wall, comes up against a man who literally wants to build a wall between your two countries? You know who I'm talking about. Lila Downs started work on a new record after the last U.S. election. It's called Salón, Lágrimas y Deseo, which means dance hall, tears, and desire. And while some expected Lila Downs to write an angry album, she actually did the opposite, and she wrote about love. Here's Lila Downs now speaking to Tom Power.
Lila Downs, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I should say you're here in Toronto as part of the Luminato Festival.
Yes.
You're performing in an opening event called Tributaries. It's incredible. It's a 5-hour outdoor concert featuring 60 artists paying tribute to the resilience of Indigenous women throughout North America. You'll be doing a feature performance shortly after other incredible Canadian Indigenous women like Isque, Lilo Pimienta, and Tanya Tagaq. What does it mean for you to be part of this celebration tonight?
Well, I think that I'm grateful because I'm living in a time that women in Indigenous communities are kind of suddenly noticed. I think that I came into this realization in my own life. I live part of my life in Oaxaca, in Mexico, on the southern Pacific coast of Mexico, and the Indigenous communities there are tortilla-making people, and they are amazing women who bring sustenance to our lives. And so I think I was taught to notice this by my mother, another tough woman, but now to be included in something that includes a Pan-American kind of a celebration of life and of music, it's an honor.
There's a great discussion happening in Canada right now that we may be starting to turn a page when it comes to Indigenous female representation in Canada. And you have artists like Tanya Tagaq winning the Polaris Music Prize. You have artists like the Jerry Cans and Isque making waves and getting airplay, and and we're coming on this show, and we're getting letters and we're getting mail saying how much they love hearing them. I'm wondering, in your experience, what are you seeing where you live, where you are? What kind of reception are you seeing to female Indigenous people in the United States and Mexico?
Yeah, well, I think in the U.S. it's a big discussion, because actually it isn't even a discussion. There's a lot of ignorance about our native root, and I think a lot of people don't even realize that Mexicans are indigenous. So that's, first of all, one of the lessons we need to teach people. And then in Mexico, it's beautiful. I think that there's been a wave. There was a bit of a revolution since 1994 with an indigenous movement, and this made youth aware of indigenous life and survival. And I think the beauty is to somehow say, okay, we eat tortillas and we have these amazing indigenous traditions, and let's just look to our left and to our right and realize that we are today living. We are not archaeological pieces. I think in our culture, in Latin American cultures, since we have these amazing temples, the temple to the sun, the temple to the moon, in the Mayan culture, and the Aztec culture, we sometimes tend to think that that was the past, and we have nothing that connects us to that past, but we do. And so I think it's a wonderful time, because we're now rejoicing in that, but we have a lot of work ahead of us to teach people about who we are.
Yeah, and it's not a continuation of the past, it's a continuation of life.
Exactly.
It's the continuation of you, it's a continuation of people.
Yeah, we're here.
Yeah. You're here.
Yeah.
Over your career, you've sung in, but you're here too.
Yeah.
You've sung in English and in Spanish, but as well, you sung in a handful of indigenous languages, Mixtec, Zapotec, Maya cultures. Though I find this really interesting. I read for a while that you weren't interested in singing in any of these languages, that you cut off your hair and you followed Jerry Garcia around. Is that right?
I bleached my hair
You
blonde.
bleached your hair, yeah, and you followed the Grateful Dead?
I did, but for some reason there must have been some article and thinking that one thing had to do with the other. I used to bleach my hair because I was in denial of myself and my Indian past. And going around and following the Grateful Dead and dropping out of society, in quotes, is what taught me to accept myself.
How so?
Well, I think I needed to live on the streets for a while, maybe do a little, some drugs and find myself, figure out who I was when I looked at myself in the mirror and loved myself. And that, of course, now I can say that, but it was a very painful process, to go through denial and then come back and say, I'm going to love myself the way that I am.
I'm sure it's a joy to sing in some of these languages, just in some of these indigenous languages. But does it ever feel like a responsibility?
It always feels like a responsibility, but I don't suffer with that. I find that interesting, amazing.
The word responsibility doesn't necessarily need to be a bad thing.
But nowadays it kind of is, to the right wingers. I guess you're not supposed to be responsible. You're always supposed to be having a good time.
So what does that responsibility? What does that responsibility feel like for you?
I think that you should find joy in expressing the survival of a culture and cultures that were meant to be abolished in their totality, but are here and surviving, as we said earlier. And this is cause for celebration, of course, but also it's a responsibility to continue in those languages. Like my mother, she writes what's ups to me in our indigenous language, and she reminds me of things, so it's about surviving in this globalized world that we live in.
I want to play a little bit of the record that you just put out. I want to play a little bit. It's paired well, by the way, with the Tributaries event at the Luminato Festival in Toronto. It's called Salon Lágrimas y Deseo. I want to play a little bit of the first single. It's called Peligrosa, or Dangerous in English. Let's hear it.
Que yo soy peligrosa.